And then there's a menu of different prizes like Jeans Day and soda from Sonic and things like that are on there as well. So here is how we build our culture. Fulton Proud is a community hashtag that we work to build with our community. And then professional development, you're doing it right now. If you follow this hashtag, which this is a very, very busy hashtag as well, because I was looking at it the other day too. That's one way, just follow that. If you have 10 minutes in your day, look at Kentucky Go Digital and find out what's happening. Of course, I talked about T-Lab and Lead Lab and Celebrate Monday, which I should be adding on all my tweets right now as well. Sean Galliard, who just put out a book called The Pepper Effect. It's all about how the Beatles, how much they're like educators and how much they can help you in education. But it talks about how to reframe the way that we think about Mondays. Also shared just a few other hashtags there that are powerful to me. This is also linked here. So there is a video that is right on this hashtag that shows how we utilize Twitter in our building from the voices of our teachers, but for sake of time, I want to spare you from that right now. For those of you that are still like, I don't know why I should be engaged in Twitter. A couple weeks ago, I put out this tweet that said, hey, I'm working on a presentation on motivating learners that don't necessarily want to be motivated.
Good morning, everybody. I think we finally have our errors worked out. I'm sorry that you all have had to wait so long. I'm working on getting the other presenters in so they can actually present. I'm going to go ahead and work on. Oh, yes. So long. I'm working on getting the other presenters in so they can actually present. I'm going to go ahead and good morning, everybody. I think we finally have our errors worked out. Caitlin and Ellen, if you can mute for just a minute. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start working on screen share. Hopefully, I've got our stuff up.
Here's just a screenshot to show an example of what food looks like. You can see across the band, that content areas.
All right, can you all see my screen? Do you see my presentation? I'm not, Caitlin or Ellen or Kara, can you all see my screen?
I see me on the screen right now, but I've had some audio kind of looping and repeating.
Kara, see my screen?
I see me on the screen right now,
Okay, we'll get it worked out. I'm just trying to.
I see your screen.
All right.
Right now.
Right now.
All right, I'm hearing some feedback and some different things. I'm going, unless
My Google hangs my YouTube. It just continues to.
right, I'm not going to be able to monitor the chat while my part's going on. So if you have any questions, let me know. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started since we're so far behind. In my presentation, I do have some examples, and I may just pass those by so that the other ladies have a chance to share what they have. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm Angie White. I'm with Oldham County Schools, and I introduced myself at the very beginning today. We've got some great things, and thanks for hanging on while we work through our technical issues. I'm Angie White. I'm with Oldham County. So we've got big kids can do cool things with technology, and so can little kids. That's one of my favorite quotes from Christine Pinto. And as we're starting to use these digital tools in our primary grades, we always need to keep in mind, why is this better than using paper or even manipulatives?
We're not. Can I stop you for just a second?
Primary grades always need to keep
There's
in mind,
a lot of audio that's repeating, and it's just showing me on the screen. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Hold on just a moment, and let me go to the cameraman. Let's do that. So can you see my screen now? And hopefully you're hearing me.
Yes.
So can you see my screen now? Okay, great. All right, so let me pick up there. The whole thing is not about abandoning those manipulatives or blocks or toys.
I'm so sorry, Angie, but it's echoing again. Do you have your YouTube
so
muted?
Let me pick up there. The whole thing is not about abandoning. Now, if I mute my YouTube, won't that mess up the stream? So if I mute, then we're not going to be able to hear me talk.
Not mute your microphone in Hangouts, but I think just from if you have your YouTube window open, I think that's where we're hearing the echo.
I don't have any others open, so let me see what I can play with here very quickly. No. Okay.
I think it's better now.
All right, let's see what we need to do. All right. So hopefully we're not getting all the feedback now. So before deciding to do a digital task, basically we need to say, you know, why is this better than using paper or manipulatives? Abolishing, you know, those foundational skills that make so much sense isn't what this is all about. So digital literacy skills should be added to the list, not taking away from these things that we're doing with our students. So it's time to make that shift away from just carving out time to do technology toward integrating the technology, but not at the expense of those fundamental skills. We need to find those natural progressions.
I think you need to share your screen again. We just see you.
Oh.
Not that that's bad.
Let's see. Hopefully we'll get this down. All right. So the first tool that I wanted to share is Adobe Spark. And there are lots of ways that we can use Adobe Spark within our classrooms because it's easy to combine the video clips, the photos, icons into a quick video. And you have a variety of free soundtracks, or you can bring in your personal music. You can put in your own voice. You can adjust the volume for the different clips. And there are lots of different ways that I've seen teachers use this. So speech and language play. You can create a video, Spark video with a single picture per page. And using big, clear pictures is very good, especially isolated on a white or a clear background to avoid any other distractions. And then the child can go through the page by page, recording themselves, naming the pictured object. Sight word proficiency, doing the same thing, but you have one sight word per page and no recorded voice. And then you have the child go through the page or go through it page by page, recording themselves reading the words. So you can also repeat this at different times throughout the year so that you can see the progress and the student can see their progress as well. Similarly, you can pick images with an action occurring and have students record a single sentence describing what's happening. There are also rhyming games where you have a series of pictures and you have the children use the video to record a word that rhymes with the one on the screen. Playing with shapes and colors. This is great where they're assigned a color or shape or both and have the students walk around the classroom or the school or perhaps the playground taking pictures that match their shape or color that they're assigned, and then they can describe them in their video. You can also use this for story starters and class projects. I can't even begin to describe all the different ways that you can use videos or Spark video. The example that I have, I'll just play that later or let you play that later for the sake of time. And then QR codes. QR codes have been around for quite some time, but I can't tell you how important those can be in the primary classroom especially. You know, you see them everywhere. They're on commercial packaging, they're on advertisement. But if you don't realize it, you can create your own QR codes using a lot of different free apps that are out there if you just Google those. And I've had teachers use these QR codes in a lot of really neat ways. Students might have questions that they have to answer, and then they go to different places in the room and scan the QR code to check their answer. Students might research a topic and create a poster using QR codes that present their information so that they're interactive for those students that are doing a gallery walk with those posters. And rather than having students type in a long URL, they can just scan that QR code. I don't know how many times, it takes half your class time just to have students, especially young students, typing in a URL. So QR codes are great for that. They can be great for interactive displays and posters in the classroom. If this is something that's just written, students are less likely to read it in the classroom, but if they have the QR codes, it makes it more interactive. There's also in the primary classroom less reading. You can have more audio once you have them scan that QR code. And then questions and answers are embedded in separate QR codes that are placed in different places in the room for the students to scan and then match the question and the answer. I also have lots of teachers that like to use QR codes to record themselves, and that way the students can just scan the QR code and go through the work, and then the teacher is like their second set of hands. So they basically clone themselves because the students are getting that instruction by scanning that QR code, and then the teacher is also in the room at the same time and can provide support. Classkick is another one that my teachers just love. You don't have to have a student log in here. You just give them the code to join in your session, and then you have them identify themselves just using their name. We have kindergarten students that do this on a daily basis, so they're used to having that code and can quickly type it in without any issues. So this allows readers and non-readers to work independently on tasks and ask for support just when they need it. You can also embed URLs in a Classkick assignment. So once again, you're not trying to give them a URL that they're trying to type in. Teachers can give student feedback in real time for students to grow in all content areas, and allows the teachers to give students feedback by text, audio, and drawing in real time. Once again, I don't want to spend time on the example, but it's really neat. As the students are working in real time, the teacher can go into that student's work and give them feedback. And then other times, if it's a formative assessment, what they can do is go in and leave audio feedback for the students, which is very powerful and very personalized. And then students can practice skills or concepts and show what they know in each content area. So very powerful. And then the final one that I have is Seesaw. Seesaw is easy for login. You just give them the class QR code, like what I just talked about, and invite them by email, or they can use their Google login. They can share and show your students projects on Seesaw. It allows the readers and non-readers to work independently on tasks and just ask for support when it's needed. Teachers can give student feedback in real time for students to grow in all content areas. And then it allows teachers to give them that feedback by text, audio, or drawing in real time. And then students can also practice concepts and skills and show what they know. I know that we have several teachers, and you all may use Seesaw as well, but it is just such a powerful communication tool and digital portfolio. And then finally, G Suite. We have lots of ways that we can use G Suite because it provides opportunities for students of all ages to learn and grow. And when you combine that with a Chromebook or a laptop, that core G Suite of programs create powerful learning for our students. So by designing those interactive experiences in the K-3 classroom with G Suite, we also are providing our students with a way to start building the skills that they'll need to be successful in the intermediate grades in our digital world. So ways that we can use this is by engaging students in things like Google Drawings, having those learning experiences. Teachers are creating opportunities for students to engage in sequencing, classification, evaluation, analyzing, as well as demonstrating their understanding of math, language, social studies, and science concepts. Google Forms has recently added the capability of inserting images as responses. So for our youngest learners who may still be developing their reading skills, the option to associate an image can help them decode the written word. And it's important to expose our K-3 students to digital learning environments and experiences, but most of their day will be spent doing. So primary students can write, draw, cut, paste, move, sing, speak, and listen. All of these artifacts of learning can be created that are created most frequently are physical, not digital. So in Google Slides, the insert image option allows us to take a snapshot from the webcam of the laptop or the Chromebook, and by using the option, option of take pictures of those physical artifacts of learning. So it doesn't have to be digital initially. That analog learning can be recorded digitally. And then Google G Suite allows teachers to give students feedback by text or by video. If you're using Alice Keeler's webcam record extension, that's a powerful way to give them that feedback at that level. So let me escape out of this, and I've tried to go through very quickly. I have my presentation linked, and you should be able to see the examples. I just don't want to take up that time since we were so late, and once again, I apologize. I want to make sure that the other ladies get to share all the awesome things that they have for us today. So let me get back into our screen.
Angie, we did have one question about Adobe Spark.
Okay.
Tyler was wondering if it allows you to have unlimited projects and also the ability to delete.
So you can delete. You are limited on the free version. You're limited in how long the Spark video can be. I believe it's 10 minutes, and you can have up to 50 projects at a time without deleting. One issue that we had to work around is the teacher would have one account and all the devices would be logged into that one account. So they would be supervised by the teacher. Now, Adobe Spark has the capability, or has given us the capability, to have that dashboard where the students can log in using Google Classroom. So we don't have that anymore. If your district doesn't have a dashboard set up with Adobe products, they will set one, or they will allow your district to set one up for free. So that has been an incredible thing just within the last couple of months in working with Adobe Spark with young students.
So just following up with that, I think one of the hesitations with primary teachers is not being a one-to-one classroom. So the things that you're talking about, have you seen this in classrooms that have done it in centers, or what would be your suggestion for people who don't have those devices?
Right. If you don't have one-to-one, I love having centers set up. That's the way so many of our classrooms, primary classrooms, are set up anyway. So having those centers where you have a handful of devices, if that's 6 devices, if that's 3 devices, they can team up and work together, or they can share. The kindergarten class that I worked with quite a bit this year, for the majority of the year until spring break, they had 2-to-1 iPads. And so they had peanut butter and jelly partners. So they knew who their partner was all the time, and they were able to work together. Now, they now have touch Chromebooks that are a one-to-one, and they've just had that since spring break. Today is our last teacher work day for the year, so they got a little bit of time with them. But I've worked with teachers that only have 2 or 3, or they've had to go and make sure that they've reserved them in the library to get 5 or 6 for the day for those rotations. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think it gives them some good ideas. There was another question, is Adobe Spark available on iPads?
Okay, so Adobe Spark is going to be web-based, so you can use it on any platform that you can get on the internet. So it does make it really easy. It's not device-centric like some other things. But in fact, like I said, especially in the lower primary, like kindergarten, that's where we have more iPads, and everything that I've talked about, we've used on the iPad.
Angie, to show the resources, someone's stated that they clicked on the resources, but it's leading them to a login page.
Okay, on the, let me see if I can get back to this very quickly. On the first one, that was for Adobe Spark, and I must have closed out my presentation. I'm having trouble finding it. Hold on, I'm sorry. On the Adobe Spark, it's just a YouTube link, so you should be good. On the Classkick, that is the teachers, and so you may not be able to see that. If you will, if you're really interested in seeing how that works, I'll be happy to. I don't want to take up a lot of time getting logged in today, but you can email me and I'll be happy to set up another meet and show you that. It's so powerful. Out of all of these, I would have to say that Classkick was the one that my teachers enjoyed the most and used the most. With Seesaw, that is an example that you should have access to. So Classkick's probably the only one, and I couldn't figure out how to set that up so you could see it without me being logged in. All right, anybody else before we get started? Okay, then I'm going to mute, and next up, you should be able to share your screen, and I'm going to put the camera on you.
Okay, I think I'm up next, right? Okay. Thank you, Angie. First of all, I think that's one thing that primary teachers can be a little scared of, is bringing some of this technology into the classroom, especially when you're not one-to-one. So it helps, you know, having those real life examples there and seeing how they can actually work. Can you all see me? Can you give me a thumbs up, Kara? Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation with you, if I can figure this out. Wait for it to load. Okay. So I'm going to be kind of walking you through my journey this past year. This is my 6th year of teaching, but my 2nd year with Google. So I'm going to kind of walk you through just my journey with that and using these tools to chase after student-led learning, student choice, and student collaboration in the classroom. Just as a message overall, that some of the things that I'm going to show you, some of them worked really well in my classroom, and there are other things that could have been tweaked a little bit more that I still see it as an opportunity to use, but I'm hoping that whatever I show you today just kind of gives you some inspiration for how you can use these basic tools in your classroom in different ways that make it work for you. So I start every school year off with some kind of general idea of a purpose of what I'm wanting to accomplish in my room for that year and with my students. So this year was our first year transitioning to a one-to-one classroom with Chromebooks. And I was ready to jump in to using these as much as possible. I knew our school was purchasing these for a reason, and I wanted to make sure that I was using it and just experimenting with them as best I could. I knew that I wanted to adopt a blended learning structure in my classroom. Technology is great, but I also still see the value in using paper and actually writing with real pencils, and I wasn't ready to just give that up. So the things that I'll share with you has a combination of both technology, but then also, you know, real pencil and paper in the classroom. But if you know me, anytime I'm wanting to start something new, I get pretty passionate about it right away and I want to jump in completely. I know a lot of people out there will advise that when you're starting something new with technology, just do it one step at a time. And I felt like I did this the year before last. We had 5 Chromebooks in our classroom. And so this year I was ready to just go all in as much as possible. I knew that there were going to be times when I was going to fail, and we'd have to just be honest with each other in my classroom and talk about that. But then I knew there would be other times that were going to work really well. So I went and jumped into this year just wanting to embrace the 4 C's, teaching this 21st century skills as much as possible. But I also wanted to take this time to become a model classroom for others in my school and possibly in other areas, being able to share out using Twitter and even now using our Kentucky Go Digital platform to share. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to kind of walk you through my path throughout the year, certain milestones that I have tried. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, but we're going to start with our first one. What I called HyperDocs. Notice the disclaimer down at the bottom. After implementing, I realized this is not technically the textbook definition of what a HyperDoc is. I was initially calling it as because it was a doc with hyperlinks in it, but if you research more into HyperDocs, that's not necessarily what it is. But I did link down at the bottom where it says the HyperDoc Girls. It does link you to the HyperDoc website that has a lot of good resources and templates for you to use. So if you are interested in learning more about HyperDocs, you can definitely check that out. My why for behind developing this first version of this HyperDoc was because of small group management. I teach 4th grade, and I think it is assumed that all primary or elementary teachers are just great at center rotations and small group management. And I know Angie and her primary teachers are wonderful at that. It's always been something that has scared me a little bit. I am not somebody who wants to be in front of the classroom the whole time and having control completely. I'm okay with chaos in my classroom, but as long as it's manageable chaos, and it stresses me out a little bit thinking I'm with one group the whole time and I don't know what anybody else is doing, but not just for the control factor, but just I'm wanting to get out there and talk to everybody and see what everyone's learning and just being in touch with what my students are doing on a daily basis. So I had developed this HyperDoc, which I will explain to you what it is, and I'll show you an example of it. But I wanted this as a way to also allow students and somewhat force them to lead their own learning. So they're relying more on what the HyperDoc is telling them to do instead of waiting for me to give the next set of instructions. But it also allowed me to provide some differentiation among my students and give them time to collaborate with each other. So my version of a HyperDoc was a hyperlinked Google slide. They were assigned weekly on Google Classroom, and they were planned daily activities for my small group rotations. So you can see on this example here, this group, number 1, would be going through writing first. Then when the timer was up, they'd be going on to word work with vocabulary words. And then their 3rd rotation would be guided reading with me. A big part of designing this and wanting to implement it, I was blessed enough to start my school year off with a student teacher. So I was really taking the opportunity to manage the behind the scenes of implementing these before she went away. So I was kind of lucky there. But these were designed to differentiate by groups of students first, and then later I was daring enough to try differentiating by individual students, which caused me to panic a little bit later, and I'll explain that in a bit. But it did allow for me to free teacher time to meet with guided reading or small group students if I needed to meet with them to work on a certain skill. And it also, one of the later additions was adding different choices of activities for students to do if they were to complete the assigned activities for that morning before time was up. So a HyperDoc was a set of hyperlinked slides. I had originally had it set up where they would open one up for each day. So each student would have their own version of the hyperdoc here, or each group of students, and they'd be working through whatever the day's activity would be. Sometimes it would be linking to a video first that they should be watching, and then responding to it on in a written form on a paper that I had in the classroom. They'd be doing things with their interactive notebooks and with vocabulary for the week. Other things like reading different passages in small groups together and then responding to them in different ways, either on a close reading worksheet or working with vocab, like with the context clues. I even integrated some other things, like this is a link to a Screencastify video, which I won't show you now, but it's a Screencastify video of me explaining what context clues are and just the procedures for identifying those vocabulary words and kind of thinking out loud of how do we determine the meaning of a word based on those clues. Go back to my original presentation here. So there are certain things in implementing these that worked well, but then there were some other things that got me burnt out on this pretty quickly, and it was more my fault than anything else. But one positive thing was that it did force students to rely on written instructions. It's something every year, I feel like in fourth grade, it's kind of amazing how they don't read the instructions on a paper. They get the paper, they put their name on it, and they look at question 1 and then say, what do I do? So that was something that I definitely wanted to tackle this year, and getting them to rely less on me and more on their own problem solving skills and figuring out, okay, what do I do? What do I do next? It did allow me to be able to differentiate work by individual student needs in small groups, but then individually. And it did encourage student collaboration when they were working on their group hyperdocs and working through something together. The negative to all of this was that it was a lot to keep up with. I had 2 core groups of reading, and in each core group, I had 29 students. So keeping up with 58 students, whether it was in small groups or individually, it was a little too much for me. And this Bitmoji here was pretty accurate of how I was feeling during that point of the year. I am not ruling this out for future use. I still think it can have a place in my classroom, but I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet. I don't know what my class is going to look like or how many kids I'll have, but I did like the model of it, and I think it did lay that groundwork for students to be able to lead their own learning and rely less on me telling them, this is what I need you to do next. So the next part of our journey was the incorporation of the choice board. One of the things that I really did like about the hyperdoc was that it did give them a variety of choice of activities to do after they completed their independent work, which led me to develop a choice board that students would refer to whenever they did complete their work for the day. So the reasons why I had led to this point was that I was wanting more student choice in the classroom. I was still wanting them to work on leading their own learning at their own pace. And it did allow me to provide some individual differentiation for different activities I was wanting students to do. So they're working on skills that they need to work on. And then it also eliminates that question, I'm done, now what? So the choice board is a hyperlinked Google slide that everyone had access to through the About tab on Google Classroom. It provided a variety of go-to activities focusing on different skills. And these were activities that I would want my students to hit on every single week, which I'll go over in a second. And it also acted as a resource for students after they finished their independent work. So when they did finish something, they automatically knew what they were supposed to do next. So it established that routine. So the choice board is a hyperlinked Google slide. Like I said, this would be linked on the About tab in our Google Classroom, and this would be hyperlinked to different activities that they'd be going through throughout the week. So we have Compass Learning, and that's linked directly to their MAP scores, which we MAP test 3 times a year. So that automatically is providing them with activities that they should work on based on how they tested the last round of MAP. ReadyGen was our reading program that we piloted last year, and it had some online language games that directly connected to what we were talking about at the time in the classroom. No Red Ink, if you haven't heard of that one, this is a really good website for grammar skills because it does allow for students to either work on skills that they choose, or you can assign things to them like capitalization, placement of commas, quotations, a variety of skills there. It also allows students to incorporate their interests by selecting their favorite characters, celebrities, TV shows, movies, and then in each activity that it gives them to do, it brings the names of their friends in, it brings in the name of their TV show, things like that. So it does help keep the students engaged. Words with Friends, if you are familiar with the app, they had a Words with Friends EDU version for a while online. Sadly, in May, about middle of May, they just decided to close it out. So if you try to log in now, it just says there was an error. But this is absolutely the favorite of my class this year. They loved challenging each other. The difference with the EDU is that you could upload your students in a classroom on here. So they just had access to play against each other. But it was amazing to see just how well they just took to this game. They loved it. They're building words and vocabulary. It would give them bonus points if they answered different vocabulary questions correctly, if they had certain bonus words built on their board, and they're having fun and not really realizing that they're doing word work at the same time. But sadly, that one has ended. So I'm hoping to find some different options there for next year. And independent reading is obviously always a choice. They'd either read or they could go to websites like Epic, or if they were in Read 180 or System 44, they had access to ebooks as well. So that was always an option. The problem that I found out quickly about this was that they all wanted to do Words with Friends every single day, which it's great. And I love that you love that game, but I think these are all equally important, that I wanted to make sure they were hitting each one every single week. So we included a sign-up sheet on the board. So if you click on that, students would bring up a Google Sheet. And this is where they would sign up and plan out for their week what they were going to be doing. So I deleted their names just for confidentiality, but their student names would be here. And then they would be going to their place on the sheet and sign up for the activities they were going to do for the entire week. So we had our code up at the top, and then they would just add in the code of what they would be doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So this helped with them because they were able to see when their friends were choosing to play Words with Friends, so they could make sure that day that there would be other people on there playing. It's hard to play when you're the only one logged in. But then it also helped for me to see, to make sure that they are hitting each activity once throughout the week, and I don't see Words with Friends 3 days in a row. So it did help with that point there, and the color coding obviously helped with that. So this was formatted in a way that if they had typed in a certain code, then it would automatically turn the cell to that color, which is just more of a visual for me, just to help with that management aspect. So positive things about the choice board. I loved that it was a go-to resource for students after they finished their work. It established that routine of they don't have to ask me what they're doing next. They know that's what they are getting to. It also incorporated accountability for students to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing when they do it. And that was the use of that student sign-up sheet. And it developed their independence among all students, that they weren't relying on anyone else. They knew what they were supposed to be doing each day. It ensured students were getting practice within all of the activities each week, so they are hitting on a variety of skills. The only negative thing about this was, I would say, is that the routine gets boring after a while. Just with anything else, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, that eventually you're going to hit that point where you just need something new. So my suggestion would just be to switch up the activities that you offer on your board. They don't all have to be hyperlinked to something. Just like independent reading, you can be doing something else in your classroom instead. Even switching up the design or the time of the day that it's being used is also very helpful. And it's just something new for the students. So that's something that I used throughout the year. I think I created this in about October, November, and I used it for the rest of the year. The last thing on our journey leads me to our, Sorry, I'm getting a message here. Okay, sorry. I didn't see there were questions being posted. How do you handle the consequences of students not choosing to station tasks? I'm not sure what that question was for. Ellen, was that for the choice board or for the HyperDocs?
That was back when you were doing the HyperDocs. She wanted to know how you handle whenever kids don't go do their stations. I was holding the questions till the end. That's why I hadn't posted them yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I had gotten a message that I needed to check the chat. So that was one of the things that I struggled with the HyperDocs was, let me turn my screen sharing off for just a second. That was one of the things I did struggle with the HyperDocs. Was just making sure that every student was on task and where they were supposed to be. Especially when my student teacher left, I went into a little bit of a panic mode. You can ask Melody Stacy about that. She had to come talk me down from a ledge a couple of different times just because it just wasn't going the way that I wanted it to. I had this worked out in my head, but then it just didn't. I didn't feel like it went as smoothly. I think I was stressing myself out with trying to develop these independent resources for students to lead their learning, which I'm going to get to the next thing that I am going to be talking about kind of solved my problems from this HyperDoc version of it. So, but just like everything else, if they're not getting to something that they're supposed to, it's that student accountability, just like you would at a normal station that, you know, you have those consequences in place. So for me, it was just more of, I need to make sure that I'm touching with each group. I even played around with limiting the time that I was with the guided reading group where they'd be reflecting at the end. And then I would have time to kind of touch base with all of the other groups to make sure they were on task and on pace. I'm going to go through and share my last thing that I was going to talk about. Let me get back to the present. The last thing that led me to, like I was talking about with the choice board, was with that routine, it can get boring after a while. And I don't know about you, but March was a time where it just seemed like everybody was just kind of losing it. They know spring break is coming, but it's not coming fast enough. So even choice board, which they enjoyed getting to throughout the year, it was just starting to get a little boring for them and they were getting a little restless. So I knew I needed to switch it up in some way and come up with something different. And I really wanted to get back to hitting on a variety of skills, reaching a level of mastery and leading their own learning where I'm taking even a bigger step further away so that they are leading more of their own learning themselves and kind of taking my role out of it. So that led me to developing my Choose Your Own Adventure series. Like I said, I wanted to maintain that level of student-led learning and independence that was developed throughout the entire year. Not everything had worked or had been successful, but that was one of the things that I really saw as a change in my students was the way that they were able to rely more on, you know, the document in front of them or the task at hand, and figuring out some of the answers to those questions on their own instead of waiting for me to walk them through every step of the way. This is what you're doing next. So I wanted to maintain that. I wanted to allow for student choice and also self-pacing. And I think that's one of the things that bothered me with the group HyperDocs in the beginning was that not every student works at their own pace. And I think that's, you know, with every small group, you have the people who work really fast and then you have the kids that are just barely hanging on. And I wanted a way for them to be able to work through certain skills, but work at their own pace and not feel rushed. I wanted to encourage students to reach a level of mastery of skills and a focus, that they're getting to an in-depth level where they're able to apply it and not just, you know, answer questions correctly in a worksheet and get a good grade and that's it. I wanted to show a little bit more of that they can reach this in-depth level where they are able to teach somebody else about those skills. And I also wanted the opportunity to provide immediate feedback for students. You know, I've read a lot of books and I've been in Twitter chats about feedback, and I never feel like my feedback is fast enough. And I've always had it in my head, well, I have 29 students in a class and I have 58 total. That's just not doable for me to give it back to them right away. You know, if I get it back to them the next day or the day after, that's fast enough. But I just knew in the back of my mind that there's got to be a better way that I can facilitate this to give them that immediate feedback. So that led me to just kind of brainstorming this idea of a Choose Your Own Adventure series. It is a hyperlinked Google Doc where each student is downloading their own copy from Classroom and is leading students through 4 different learning paths. So my 4 paths that are important for me to hit on is language arts, social studies, literature, and informational. I'm an ELA teacher and social studies teacher. So those are the 4 things that I wanted to make sure that we're touching on and cycling through these skills that we've been talking about all year. Within each learning path, students work through 4 different levels of complexity of a certain skill, which I'll show you in a minute. And students work towards showing mastery of a skill through working through those various levels, but then also a Flipgrid reflection to earn badges in the classroom. So if we open up the Choose Your Own Adventure, this is round 1. There are multiple rounds created, and there will be more for next year. They open up a doc, and the first page of the doc is just kind of their menu of what learning path they would like to choose from. So they have language arts, social studies, literature, and informational. And from there, I've posted each learning target so they know exactly what they're expected to be doing as they work through this certain learning path. These are each linked to a certain part in the document. So each page is bookmarked for them to access quickly, but they can also just scroll down since it is just a doc. The reason I chose a doc over a slide is the ability to make a copy for each student on Google Classroom. If you have a Classroom account, you are not able to post Google Slides for students to download their own copy. So that's why I chose to do a doc instead. So then they choose a path. So for this example, we'll do literature. And the target for this round here for literature is I can explain how a character changes from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. So on this page here, it tells them what text they're working from. And in this case, it's a story called Dad's New Job, and that's from a Storyworks. I have a common place in my classroom where I'm keeping the Storywork issues that they need to be working from. So they know exactly where to get that resource from. For each level, it's reminding them to reread the story before completing the activity. Rereading it 4 different times wasn't necessary for everyone, but some students did need to have that text in front of them and to look back in the story for certain things, which was okay with me. So then we go through 4 different levels of activities working towards the skill of being able to explain how a character changes from the beginning to the end of the story. So level 1 was always just a basic comprehension activity to make sure they're understanding the text that they're reading. So in this case, level 1 was to identify the sequence of events by completing the plot map in the folder. I'll have a picture, I think I have a picture just that I'll show you in a second. I have a place in my classroom where we have laminated folders hanging up for each one of these levels where they need to get their papers from. Level 2 is always a basic comprehension quiz to check their understanding of the story. That is a Google form that grades it automatically. And from there, they need to have 80% accuracy or more to be able to move on to the next level. If not, then they need to go back, look back over the story again and take the quiz again. Level 3 is hitting on that skill focus a little bit more in depth, interacting with the story. So in this case, they're showing how the main character, Henry, has changed from the beginning of the story to the end by completing the Henry's theme page, which is also found in a folder in my room. Levels 1 and 3 are always on paper. 2 is always a quiz. And then level 4 is always applying the skill focus to their writing in some way. So that would also be on paper as well. And if we were using Storyworks as a resource, then this would be the writing contest that was provided in Storyworks. And then for the final, they would be responding to a Flipgrid to earn a badge. So I'll show you the Flipgrid, and then I'll show you how this all actually works and how I keep track of it all. Uh-oh. Sorry, hang on one second. I'll have to fix that link. I'm not sure why it would be locked.
As of June 1st, Flipgrid locked all of the links to protect student privacy.
Oh, okay. Well, then that link won't work, but I can show you on here. So they would access the Flipgrid, and to show mastery of the skill, they would need to answer in their Flipgrid 2 different types of questions. The first type of question is a skill question that is answering something about specifically how the skill relates to the story. And then they would answer at least 1 reflection question, which requires them to apply it more to their own lives. So in this case, it's asking, think about why Henry is unhappy about his dad's job. How does he overcome his feelings? So we're applying that skill of how is he changing from the beginning to the end of the story. But then they're choosing a reflection question to answer, which in this case, it's either how can you relate to the main character? Have you ever felt similar? How did you overcome those feelings? Or what could somebody else learn by reading this story? So they had that choice of, if I can't relate to the character, then what's just a lesson we could be learning instead? If I watch their Flipgrid and they've nailed the questions and they've showed mastery of this skill, they earn a badge. I'll show you what those look like. Okay. So first things first, if they had passed all 4 levels and they've answered the Flipgrid, they would earn a badge. Oops, sorry. And these badges here would be just something that I created in Google Drawings. And for each round, they would be titled whatever the name of the story is or the name of the skill right here. And then I would print these out on labels, just 2 per mailing label, and cut them in half. And then when they earn their badge, they have a place in our classroom where they would post their badges. The behind the scenes part, I used a Google Sheet to keep track of everyone's progress, which looked like this. So this is actually for round 2. There's different tabs at the bottom for each of the rounds that we've started. On the sheet, they would get an X if they had passed the level. If there is a 2 somewhere, like right here, that just means that they need to take a second look at either the Flipgrid or the skill page that they were working on. Even if it's the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th look at it, that would remain a 2. Just means that they are almost there, just not quite. If they had earned the badge completely, it would be highlighted in that color of the learning path, and then they would be free to start another one. So this would be updated automatically as students are working. I'm about to show you a short video of what this actually looks like in the classroom and just share some of the resources that have made it a little bit easier for me to manage. I don't know if my sound's going to work.
Enter your paper in the black basket. If there's an X, then that means you've moved on to the next level. All right, make sure you have StoryWorks in front of you if you're looking back over the story. Keep voice level down, everybody doing their own independent work. Could be cause and effect to think about what structure would work better since we're talking about 2 groups of teachers.
Just for the sake of time, I'll stop the video. But what happens is any given day when you come into my classroom, I look like a crazy lady on a rolly chair and wheeling around from table to table in my room. But that is the easiest way for me to manage this. So when a student completes a leveled activity, they keep it with them at their seat. They don't come find me. They wait for me to get to them. So I have a rule in my head that I'm not going to spend more than 2 to 3 minutes at a table. So that way I can ensure that I'm hitting tables multiple times throughout the course that we're working through this. So when a student completes a level, I am automatically there correcting it or updating my badge tracker on my Chromebook, and then they move on to the next level. They pass all 4 levels, then they are free to go Flipgrid in the hallway, and then they come back and they choose a new learning path. Some of the resources that have helped me with this our Brain Pop and Powtoon and Learn Zillion videos are very helpful as far as language arts goes. Those are a little bit harder for us to always find resources for, as well as social studies. So those have helped a lot there. A lot of the reading activities, both literature and informational, and some of the social studies are coming from Storyworks. If you do not have a subscription to Storyworks and you are an ELA teacher, grades 4 to 6, then I definitely recommend you checking that out. Storyworks Junior is more appropriate for 2nd and 3rd grade. And I do believe if you reach out to them, they will send you a sample for you to check out. But those are definitely helpful resources. They are monthly subscriptions. They give you literature and informational text and comprehension pages to go along with them. For the sake of time, I won't show you, but if you click on this QR code or if you scan it, it will bring up a PDF that kind of walks you through the behind the scenes of building these Choose Your Own Adventure docs in case you are interested. And obviously you can always reach out to me. But my reflection for this is just it met every single goal of what I was wanting to do. It allowed me to maintain that student-led learning. It allowed for student choice, but also student pacing. It encouraged them to reach a level of mastery of the skills, and it helped with their perseverance. If they started a learning path, they weren't allowed to skip to another one until they had completed that one. And it allowed me to provide immediate feedback to students. And I think the biggest bonus of this was that all students were engaged. They were working the entire time and they had fun doing it. So we always do a Flipgrid or a survey at the end of what are the best things about 4th grade if you had to tell an incoming 4th grader. And this was a popular choice this year. It was one of the best things about 4th grade was Choose Your Own Adventure. So that was just a rewarding thing for me to hear. I know I went through this quickly and there's probably a lot more to share, but if you have any questions, I'm open to them.
We have a question about how long it takes you typically to do one of those create your own adventures from starting the idea to actually finishing it and being able to post it for the student.
Okay. So if I didn't have Storyworks or a resource like that, it would probably take me a little bit longer. That subscription alone has helped me really plan it in no time at all. Once you have the template made of the doc that you're wanting and you have that structure in mind, like for me, level 1 was always just a basic comprehension skill, 2 is comprehension quiz, 3 is more in-depth at that skill, and 4 is writing. Just having that routine really helped me just kind of plug in what we needed to. Storyworks is great because it provides you with the text, but it also provides you with a variety of comprehension activities to use along with them. And it also allows you to differentiate it as well. They do have options online of lower lexile of the text and also a lower level of the activity pages that they're doing. So this allowed me to differentiate between my tier 1 kids and then in my second group, my tier 2 and 3 kids as well. So for me, it depends on, I guess, what your goal is in your head of what you're wanting to use this for. I had one student who I wasn't sure on the pacing to begin with, as far as just when to expect somebody to finish. But I had one student who she's finishing it as I'm making them. So I had to kind of race to keep up with her. So she was very patient with me this year. Because there would be times when she would say, well, this quiz isn't linked yet. I'm like, well, hang on a minute, Rachel, just hang on. So it kind of depends. But for me, it was within a day or two, I'd have everything linked and planned and with the Flipgrid and all of that.
Yeah, we all have those students that work faster than we can even think.
Yes.
Another question here. To begin the year with your hyperdocs and then move into individual learning through choose your own adventure, or will you begin with those choose your own adventure? Each year are you going to start back with hyperdocs and then build your kids up to the choose your own adventure?
No, I think what my plan is, I loved the hyperdocs format. I just don't think it was right for that time. I think it would be more appropriate during one of our RTI groups. We call them what I need times. So I think it'd be more appropriate in one of those smaller groups there to manage and maintain. I plan on using Choose Your Own Adventure from the start of the year. We'll probably have to do more walking through one round together. But I definitely plan on using that right away. So the way my structure of the block was this past year was that we had our what I need time, then we had time for core, whole group reading, and then we would have about 35 to 45 minutes for Choose Your Own Adventure every day. So I definitely plan on starting with that next year and just looking at hyperdocs, more of a small group management, I think, for RTI. And then I see there's a question there about what do you do in the social studies section? That is probably the trickiest out of all of them because, with social studies in fourth grade, it is specifically Kentucky history, and we don't have a lot of resources for that. We do have a subscription to Social Studies Weekly online, so I plan on incorporating more of that into that thread for next year. We have a social studies textbook that is somewhat outdated, but I did use that for the first couple of rounds, reading certain sections about the regions of Kentucky, and then pulling some online resources. There's a Quizlet that I had pulled in on there. That's probably the most time consuming just because of the lack of resources I feel like I have available right now. If anyone has good resources to recommend, I would appreciate it.
And then it was more of a request that we had, just can you put a copy of your actual hyperdoc in the presentation? I think they want to play with that a little bit. So,
okay.
So if you can do that. And there was also the question about, have you used this with struggling readers? And I think that was during the hyperdoc section.
The hyperdoc I did for both groups. I actually did everything I showed you today. I did with my tier 1 kids, but then also my tier 2 and 3. My afternoon groups were my 2-3 kids, where I would have them for less time because they were spending their win in Read 180 or System 44. So their time with Choose Your Own Adventure was limited, but I did modify certain versions of it, and I can share my screen with you really quickly to show you a modified version. And that was more of lower Lexile activities, and because we had less time, I eliminated the 4th level. So they were just working through the first 3 levels. And then also I had a couple of non-readers in my classroom. So I needed to make sure that I was giving them what they needed to complete this on their own without me right by their side. I wanted them to feel that independence too, of being able to work through something and being able to put their badge up there because they know they've completed it on their own. So this is a modified version of it that I would just post separately on Google Classroom just for those select students. And the only thing different, everything looks pretty similar. The only thing different would be the way that they were completing the activities. A lot of my non-readers also required scribes. So I had adapted the activity pages they were doing to do it digitally instead. So they had that option of using read write to speak into the microphone, and it would type it out for them. So one of the things was that this was became an active link to Storyworks Online, and that would give them audio of the text that they were listening to. So all I needed to do was just give the link and then my classroom password for students to access the text that way. So they were able to look at it, but then also able to listen to it being heard online. Storyworks provides audio for both the regular text, but then also the lower Lexile levels as well. And then the only other thing I did was adapt the activity pages that they would be doing to a Google Doc instead. So that way they have the read-write extension on there to read the prompts to them. And then they also had the option of speaking into the microphone so they could enter in their responses that way instead. So they were still able to do everything and complete the same activities the rest of the kids were doing, but they were just using different tools to complete it. And I think that's it, unless anyone else has questions, or you can always reach out to me and email. Ellen, I think you're up next.
Yes, I'm going to switch the camera over to you, Ellen. And yeah, there you go.
All right, hi. Hopefully the baby sleeps through all this. She just fell asleep, so hopefully I don't have to jump out of screen. But I am sharing fun, formative digital assessments that kids don't even know when they are being assessed. So let me screen share. Okay. Hopefully that's working. Do I see it? I'm sorry if you hear frozen in the background. I had to occupy the 4-year-old somehow. Okay, so these are fun digital formative assessments that you can assess without the students even knowing. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Pioneer Elementary in Kenton County. Excuse me. So these are some of the tools that I have used in my classroom for the past 3 years. I've been one-to-one for about a year and a half now, going into my 2nd full year of one-to-one with Chromebooks. And before that, I was one-to-one with old iPhones. So these are some of the tools that I use in my classroom. And also I have one at the very end that does not require the one-to-one. So the first one is quizzes. Quizzes is a quiz app that can be played live in class. It has a timer on it. It can be up to 5 minutes per question. It's student paced. So it's not a countdown for everybody. You can give immediate feedback to the kids. There is question answers on the screen. It can be assigned as homework, which is student paced. I use that as early finisher or as a center. Sometimes I put my task cards in as a quizzes. You also get detailed reports, and it's completely free. So here's a short little video of quizzes in my classroom. Let's see if it's going to work. Worse. Yay, technology. Oh, here we go. So they get like a login. There it goes. They were working on multiplication, so some of them had the whiteboards and the whiteboard markers and the erasers. And it shows little memes every time they get it right or wrong. So my goal this year was to get pictures of all of our staff and make memes out of our staff, but that's this summer's goal now. So, and I love the leaderboard also that displays on the screen. We use it for goal setting. And I tell the kids if they get over 80%, then we can have a treat for the whole classroom, and like a single M&M. If they get 100% accuracy, that's what I look for instead of the first, second, third, then they will get a treat for that as well. My kids are not always in rows. That was during K-Prep testing, so. And I love how you can like sit in the back and see the kids' screens or walk around and see them green or red. They'll flash green and red when they get them correct or not correct. And my favorite part of this is the detailed reports. You have the name and you've got every question, what they've got correct, what they did not get correct, every question what the incorrect answer that they selected. My favorite part right there is how much time that they spent. So I like to print these and staple them in agendas and send them home if we're spending like 34 seconds on a question, because I know that they can do better than that. The next one is Quizlet Live. It's a team competition. You can use Quizlet as a study tool at home or during centers. You can, if you do the paid version, the kids can have an individual login, and you can actually track and see what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how often they're doing it. It has games, it has flashcards, it's got test options. The paid version does have those detailed reports. You can do the free version as well with, but you just don't get the detailed reports about what everything they're doing. You can also use it as a live to get a sense of the whole group knowledge. And there's a trick to the live that I never really tell the kids until they start playing it. And I like to do this with when I'm sharing it with teachers as well. Unfortunately, we can't play live right now because you have to be with each other. So if you see as they're starting, they get put on teams. And typically I have 7 groups in my classroom, and they know if they're in group 1, they go to table 1, group 2, they go to table 2. So they know how to pick up their device and wander around and find their group. So I'll try to skip through this. And they kind of wander around and find their groups and see how they are. And these guys have been playing it all year, so they know that they have to talk to each other. This is not something that you want to do if you like a quiet classroom. So this is what their screens look like. They cannot see what their teammates have. They can only see what they have. But they have to work together because only one person has the correct answer. So they continuously talk, and they're given the definition and have to find the term that it matches with. And there's a kid flossing, of course. And it shows on the leaderboard at the front. And if one kid decides to click too quick and they don't converse with their group, their score goes all the way back to 0, and it's the first team to 11 wins. And then at the very end, they also give you an overview of the class of which ones worked and which ones didn't, which ones they got right and which ones they did not get right. So they go continuously walk around, they're talking to each other, seeing if you can see them go all the way back to 0 when they click a wrong answer. So I use this, I am the reading teacher for 3rd grade. So I use this with our Journeys vocabulary. So of course we are flossing because we're super excited. So this is not a game for a quiet classroom. I'm sorry, you can't really see. The next one is Kahoot. This is one of the original ones. I know a lot of people that love Kahoot. This is more of a primary thing. It's got colors and symbols instead of just the question answer. So this is more for your non-readers. It's much like quizzes, but the answers are not on the screen. That you do have the option of giving different types of games. You can give a quiz, you can give jumble. You can also do a survey and discussion for more of like embedding into class discussions. You can play one-to-one, or you can play as a team. Jumble, you can drag and drop and put those things in order. Like you can make sentences and you give the kids like 4 options of words that go in there. So the teacher screen, the board looks like this. It'll have the question up here, how do you spell? And it gives you the answers down here. This is what the student screen looks like. The answers are not on that student screen. So there is kind of a lot of looking up and down. I usually read these out loud and say, oh, red triangle is this, and blue diamond is this. A neat thing about Kahoot is it also does not allow kids to answer right away. So they can't just click really quick. They give about 10 seconds with just the question on the screen, and kids have to think about it first. So here's a quick video for Kahoot as well. So we were doing multiplication facts as well. Again. So you can see there are no answers on the screen. There's no question. So I was yelling out the answer, the question again. And you can see the timer's there. It also has the this number over here tells you how many kids have answered, and that it'll tell them, and it just spins. If you see this screen right here and this screen right here, they've already put in their answers, and it just spins with a color until the very end, and it'll give you a graph. This is one of my favorite presentation tools. This is called Pear Deck, and it's much like Classkick, I believe, but I have not used Classkick that Angie was talking about. This is an interactive slideshow. It's an add-on for slides. You get to control the student computers from your computer, and the students can interact with the presentation as you go. You embed questions in the slides, and you see students' answers live on the teacher dashboard. It's a free add-on. It does have a paid upgrade that gives you more options of reports and what you see in your teacher dashboard, as well as 2 additional questions. So this is what the student screen looks like. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. I captured it from my teacher dashboard. You have the embed options of multiple choice questions. You have written where they have to type out an answer. They could add in a number. You also have the ability to embed a website into that screen. The paid version also gives you the ability for draw and for draggable. So that's what the student screen looks like. Then you've got this dashboard. This is a draw example. I stole this from, these are not my students. These are lovely Team Kenton teachers that were my guinea pigs last week. And their question was drawing a cat. And so you can see how they were drawing, and it live updates, and it shows exactly how they're doing it right there on your screen. So I'm usually walking around with my Chromebook on with the kids, and love watching them type them as they're going. And you can, with the paid version, you can actually star some of the ones that you want to share, and then you have the option to project them on the board to show examples of, and you have the option to lock the screen as well, so nobody else can enter their answers when they see like whatever you're projecting. And it also gives you it doesn't show the kids' names when you're projecting them on the screen. So it gives you the ability to say, oh, look at this, or this is almost there. What could we do to fix it? So I use that a lot in the reading, and you can also scan PDFs and make and have questions for that. Then there's an online testing option called Formative. It used to be called Go Formative. It's an online assessment tool. You can embed questions on PDFs. You can collect data. It gives us lots of pretty graphs for that. It gives you the ability to have a drawing with something in the background, like that you can, for example, one year we didn't have a lot of paper, and it was the very end of the year, and we wanted a common assessment. So I embedded it in Formative. And it was a question where is this on the number line? Where's this fraction on the number line? I could embed the number line, and the kids could add the fraction on there. You can put videos on there and ask kids can answer questions on the videos, and you can see the answers live as you are working on that. And it's free, but it also has a paid upgrade as well. So this is what kind of like it looks like with the PDF. You can upload any PDF on there, and then you have your question options right here, and like the kids type over here. So you can retype the questions, or you can just have them answer right there. So you can make a PDF interactive, or you can have like a picture or anything like that interactive, and have, for example, I know we have some elementary art teachers in there, and so you can have a picture, and you can embed questions on that picture and have students respond or reflection or anything like that. So this is what it looks like with the teacher live dashboard. So I always have my kids just log in with their first name and last initials, and you can see what they wrote, and the red and the green is if they got it correct or not. With the written, it's still a little finicky and I always go back with your human eye and look over it. But with the written, you can have it automatically grade your questions with key words, or if you want it word for word. Edpuzzle is one of my favorites. It's where you can embed questions into video. So you can steal a video from YouTube or Khan Academy or anything like that, and you can actually have it playing so the kids can watch it. And you can have it with, you can have, I think, around 20 videos, 15, 20 videos with the free version, and you embed the questions in there and link it through your Google Classroom, and you can see all the, with that, you can see all of what the kids are doing on the questions. You have multiple choice questions. You also have written questions as well. And I think, let's see if this works. I tried to embed it, and it didn't want me to embed. Okay, so like this is an example that I use for showing with different professional developments and showing how it actually works. So it's just the this is Crash Course. Hopefully it works and you can see it.
When I say Hollywood, you probably think of big budget
So
movies,
you watch the
star-studded
movie, and as
premieres,
you're
and studios with
watching, kids can skip as much as they want.
to pre-recorded musical scores and
However,
enjoy sound effects, film cemented its place as the main medium
they're
for
skipping
mass
through it, they're not
communication
watching
in art
it.
and commerce.
It stops.
As important as Hollywood was during
And it asks you a question. So you have the question over here and you have to figure out. They also have the ability to rewind and see it. And they can rewatch that section. So they can press rewatch and watch that section to see what the answer is again. So you can embed questions. I use this a lot. One of my favorite things to use it is Constitution Day, because there's a great video, but kids kind of get bored watching it on the smart board. There they can watch it at their own pace and they can reflect on it as they are going. Caitlin kind of already talked about Flipgrid. It looked like through the comments that a lot of people already knew about Flipgrid. I also love and use Flipgrid, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because a lot of us know about it. You can post a video. I've seen it flipped where teachers actually post the video and students can reply to that video as their response, or they can do a written question. So I do the blended classroom as well. I do the pencil and paper. These kids are too young to be just using technology. So it's, again, this one is free with a paid upgrade. I have the free version. It works just fine for me. And the last one, if you're not a one-to-one classroom quite yet, if you haven't heard of Flickrs, it's been around for quite a bit. It's the QR codes that's individual for each student, and it's great for using, it's kind of the overt response of back in the day. I used to have the overt response cards where it was A, B, C, or D, and they were all color-coded, and kids would hang it, hold it up. But this one is just a QR code, and it's all different, and you can scan it with your smartphone, your iPad, and see immediately if the kids are getting green or red and getting it correct or incorrect. So that's all I have to share today. You can follow me on Twitter, email me, ask me any questions. Feel free. I hope that you have something, at least one thing, that you can use.
And Ellen,
okay, looking at questions.
Ellen, yes, you got a question.
So I see on Quizlet Live, are their teams randomized or do you assign them through the program? You can, on the free version, they're all randomized, but if you pay the paid version, it's only $34.99 a month. And if you get more than one person to sign up under your link, you get free months and they get 20% off. I do it, the paid version. You can actually assign it so one kid never works with another kid and the kids think it's randomized, but you can actually have that strategic teacher placing with that as well.
And I'm looking, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. So if, I guess we can switch on over to Kara, and then if we have questions, we have that time at the end. So we'll jump back in if somebody comes up with a question. Thank you.
All right, sounds good.
Great. So I've switched over to you, Kara. It should be showing yours.
Can everyone see my presentation? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's kind of funny presenting and not being able to see yourself on there while you're presenting. So I'm going to touch on two different apps that you can use to enhance your instruction in the classroom. And so I've titled it Going Places with Technology. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Moyer Elementary School in Fort Thomas. I was in Lexington for 7 years and came to Fort Thomas this past year to complete my 8th year. And so one of my big things is I always find myself, anytime I'm on a trip or going somewhere, I always am telling family members and friends, oh my gosh, I just wish that I could have my kids here with me. I wish they could see this or experience this. And we spend so much time sharing about it whenever I return. But now, whenever I have those experiences, there are ways that we can actually bring our kids into those moments so that they can be there. So now when a kid asks, can we go there? The answer is yes. So I'll be presenting about Google Expeditions and Do Ink Green Screen today. So the first thing, what is Google Expeditions? So up here you will see the app. That's what it's going to look like if you go to download it. But I'm going to share just a quick clip that I found that made me think about my kids sometimes, because we sometimes get in our little bubbles and in our comfort zones and we don't realize what all is outside of where we live each day. So I'm going to start by going to this, hopefully. Sharing.
My name is Lance Teesling. I'm in middle school in Eagle Grove, Iowa. Eagle Grove is not a very tall place. It's actually very flat. This is the tallest building in the country, about 50 feet tall. I'm to be an architect and design skyscrapers. Yesterday at school, we went on a class trip with buses. This was something very different. The very first expedition we went on was to the Burj Khalifa.
Go ahead and grab 2 hands and put them up to your face.
It's so tall.
Okay, we're gonna go to the 100 and
So the thing that I love the most about that video were all of the smiles and the laughs and the excitement. And so before you start worrying about what were all of those cardboard goggles that they were using and what was inside of there, I actually don't have those within my classroom. So my students do have iPads and they use this on their iPads. So here's just a short clip of what it looks like whenever my kids are downloading it and using it in the classroom.
So click on one. Here, us to here, like sitting around sometimes.
So just going back to that, we can't always take our kids everywhere that we want them to see, but we can now take these virtual field trips in order to get them to these places that we wish that they could experience. And so they have so many, over 800 virtual and augmented reality field trips. They provide 360-degree panoramic views and 3D images. You can go to outer space. You can go swimming with sharks. Older students can go on college campus visits. And right now, like I said, there are over 800 more places to go, but they are continuously adding to sites and using drones and using technology to bring that right into our classroom. I'm going to show you on the next slide. We're going to actually log into my iPad so that I can walk you through one that I went through with my students this year. We were reading with our reading series about Machu Picchu, and so as an engagement activity to extend the curriculum, we went into Google Expeditions afterwards and they got to go in. So I'll show you exactly what that looked like from my teacher iPad. It's going to provide details and points of interest. There are going to be questions, and it's just going to help to really enrich your curriculum. So at the bottom there, I've just said the days of wishing we could go there are gone. Now we can. And so I'm going to get out of here and hopefully... Okay, so you can see my screen there. And so I'm going to open up Expedition and go to the top, and you can just search. Like I said, they are adding many, many more. So here was the first one on the list there. So I can go to View Full Screen. And the goggles that you saw would allow them to hopefully come down here and see from the eye point of view. I'm moving my iPad right now around the room to see, but I can go outside of here and see it full screen as the teacher, and I could walk them through. So let's see, hopefully it's gonna work. So here's from the student point of view. They can see this and they can rotate around. They can click on the different areas. It will show them where to go. And it will point them exactly to where these places are at Machu Picchu, and they can read all about it. They can continue to advance around. And so this is where the kids can go, and they are going to direct there with their little white dot. And it brings up all types of, what I like most about it is the information that kids typically sometimes get bored to tears with, but this allows for them to read that and be engaged in those activities. So as the teacher, you can be in there and you can be guiding these conversations with the students. And so it will actually provide you with the questions that you can ask your students as they go in. So let's see. Right here, this is the teacher preview. So you can read this with your students, or the students can go in and read it on their own, whatever it is that you allow for your kids to do. So they're going to go through and you can click and it will take you to all the different areas. And you'll see that it's asking you questions here at the top that the kids can answer. So I really love it. It's neat. You can slide over and continue to see different pictures. And then you slide up and it will give you the questions to go with those. So I'm going to come back over here to share my slides. So that was Google Expeditions. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing that we can touch on is Do Ink Green Screen. And so let me actually log out of here and quit. Okay, are we still good? Can you still hear? Okay, good. So for Do Ink Green Screen, this is something I just started using within the last 2 months of school. And so you'll notice in the background, it's just green crepe paper. It's nothing fancy. You can use green small on a desk. You could just use a green folder. There are so many different ways that you can incorporate this into the classroom in a quick and easy way that's cheap. So just some ways to incorporate this. You can see here on the screen that the kids are standing in front of the green screen, but on the iPad, you can see the background is very different based on what they have created within this app. And I really strongly advise going and following Do Ink on Twitter with Do Ink Tweets. They provide so many wonderful examples of how kids use these, not just in a 5th grade setting or a one-to-one setting, but how they use it all the way from K all the way to high school. So I strongly recommend following them. I get a lot of great ideas from there. So on the iPad, you can see that the kids have created a background that they wanted to have behind them. So what prompted this was for science, we were doing career exploration, and that's a lot of times what I use this for and plan to use next year. So they're exploring a career that they are interested in. So I showed them meteorology. We were going into our weather unit and what a meteorologist does and what the greens look like, and then they got to do it on their own. So this was just a 2-day activity. The kids got to choose where they wanted to report the weather from, and they created the image or found the image that they wanted to put in the background. And then they created a prompt with their teams, a script, what they wanted to talk about, and then they filmed it all together. So I had to do nothing after I gave that information out except for and help out where needed. So just some ways to incorporate with science, weather, and habitats. With math, they can create their own word problems and then stand in front of them and act it out. Reading with storytelling and writing and book talks. Social studies, they can go back in historical events and have them as they walk through and provide that virtual reality of going back in time. It's great for speaking and listening and role playing. It provides creativity and so much more. And I just recommend that you ask your kids because they are going to have ideas that we've never thought of. After I introduced this to my kids, I had students that asked to stay after school because they had done some research and they had found ways to use it. And so they would stay after school and share with me ways that they found that we could use it. They were just so excited because they were creating it. They were sharing with one another. And you can actually embed these into a video to put on a QR code and then hang them in the hallway and other kids can watch them. It's really exciting. The kids love it. So I will share with you a quick video of some of my kids and their meteorology reports that they created. So I took what, you'll see that it comes from my vantage point and then from the students as well. And I've just created it into a short iMovie for you to watch.
Go. Hello, I'm Griffin Barlow. I'm Maxwell Newman. I'm Kevin Bonaventura. And I am Lily Hug. And you're watching Channel 14 News. On Monday, we have a high of 50 and a low of 40. Nick Heiser reporting from the New Yorker's News. I'm here reporting for you your Thursday morning weather. Today, the sun rose at 6:11 a.m. This morning, the high is 54 degrees and feels 40 degrees.
On Thursday, there's 60% chance of showers. New York floods are already slowing us down. Let's hope we won't get flooded again. On Friday, the high is 51 degrees and the low is 36 degrees with cloudy skies. But we will have very high wind speeds. Hi, I am Craig Miller, reporting live from Fort Myers Beach, Florida. On Sunday, it looks like we will have evening thunderstorms with a 40% chance of rain.
A 80% chance of rain, a bit more wind coming from the southwest. Who likes Mondays? Sure, not me.
All right. So whenever we talk and look at the green screen, like I said, that was something very new for me. And luckily, I had lots of people in Fort Thomas that were able to help out. And now there are several classrooms within my building that are using it and just exploring with it. And that's exactly what it takes with both of these, whether it be Google Expeditions. We, at the beginning of the year, just worked it out and started playing around with it. And then by the end of the year, we were using it to do so many different things. And I was using it in my choice boards, and students were going in there and working on the different levels to go and explore and answer questions about different places that they either A, were interested in, or B, that was directly related to what we were learning that week. And so in the last week of school, the kids got to actually go in. They made a list. It was a school countdown. So I think it was 7 days left. And they went in and found activities places that they wanted to go. So they wrote the 7 places they wanted to go, and then they actually went in and found how many different places they could find in Google Expeditions, and they were sharing with one another. And I always just think back to a kid of mine 3 years ago that said, someone brought up the beach, and he was from Nepal, and he says, well, I've never been to the beach. And I didn't have this app at that time. And so I was able to show him pictures, and we were able to look and see in that way. But if he could have really been in something like this to truly feel like he was there, it would have been so much more, concrete. And I think it would have meant so much more to him as opposed to just seeing a random picture that maybe he could find online. So it's so fun. It's so creative, and it doesn't take a lot of prep time. It allows you to, as you could see on the Google Expeditions, it has advanced questions. It has, lower order thinking that can pull those kids up to those higher levels. So pretty differentiated in there. I'm looking at my little notes here to make sure that I touch on everything, but I can't tell if there are any questions or not. But just as much as we always are fighting for our time, these are just new ways to enhance that curriculum, not something that necessarily you're starting or anything like that we've shared in the beginning, but they can all kind of blend together well to really go above and beyond.
So Carol, we do have a couple of questions. One of the last ones had to do with, let's see, the iMovie. So you have to use iMovie to get the green and the backdrops to sync. I'm a Windows girl currently, so.
Okay, for the green screen, that's going to actually be on the green screen app. So I have that pulled up here. This is what you're going to see whenever you go. Am I not sharing my screen right now? Hang tight. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
There we go. Can we see it now?
Yes.
So this is what you're going to see whenever you go to download the app. It's not actually through iMovie. I use the iMovie just to create what my students had created. So here's what you're going to see whenever you download Green Screen by Do Ink. You're going to see these plus signs on the side here, and these are your different levels for the backgrounds. And so the student here, you can see that so my students, whenever we first started working with it, they just chose one picture to constantly be in the background, just as that first step. However, my students now want to create iMovies to put in the background and then time themselves to make sure that they move and change their dialogue and work their script in to change whenever their iMovie changes to the that she's done just that. She has a first part that you see here is at the beginning, but it's going to transition into something new just shortly. So she's in that middle layer. So these are different layers that you're going to add. This layer with her, that's the filming layer. So that's where she's going to just video, and it's going to go on top of the layer. So it's not tricky once you just get in there and play around with it. And I'll tell you, once you let your kids start seeing it, they can figure it out. We just sat down and we started talking and playing around, and it really just you might have to drag a layer here or there to get it in the correct order so that the green is in the very back. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of playing around with it, not much time at all to figure it out.
We had another question about Google Expeditions. Well, actually, we had a couple, but can you edit the information on the Google Expeditions?
What was in there. And so what you teacher view, and the students are scenery. So if they're not seeing all of the words that I showed you from just the teacher view, you can have that. Then the kids won't be reading. They'll just be watching as you guide them through each of the places that you want them to see about, as you read about. And so you can either do it where the teacher is reading and directing through, or it can be self-guided for the students. And so you can have them working in small groups. You can have them individual, or in, if you're working with a small group and you being the teacher leader there, they can have it on their iPad and direct them where to read. But no, to my knowledge, there's no way to actually take out information or add to the information that's within that app.
And then the other question was, can you get Expeditions on the Chromebook? And that's a moving target right now, by the way.
Well, and so I figured it would be. So I did a little research before I came in, and they are working on it, but currently it's not on Chromebooks. And so it's on the iPads. And so they are working towards implementing it to be something. I wish that it were, because that would have made sharing a little bit easier for me today too.
Right.
But,
I would say that with the Surface Pro, you can't do it on that yet either. But
yeah. So I like that coming, because it is truly a wonderful resource.
And then there was another question, and it actually had to do with sharing your iPad screen. So how are you sharing your iPad screen today?
Well, I had to play around with that also. And so I'm using QuickTime Player. So I came down, I just opened that application and right-clicked and did new movie recording. And so I simply just have my iPad plugged into my laptop with a USB cord, and I was able to easily just go on there and record a new movie and to share from here. So you'll be able to see, you can do the drop down, and I can either do from my screen or I can do from the iPad. So I had to play around with a couple of iPads. I'm out of town, and the internet had to be synced and all kinds of fun stuff. So it was a fun little technology experiment, but that is just within QuickTime Player right there.
Okay, let's see. They asked, did you use your iPhone? But I think you just said that you used a couple of different iPads.
Yes, I just used, so in front of me right now, the only thing I used was the iPad to show the Google Expeditions. So that walked through the Machu Picchu, Google Expeditions, and then everything else I've done from my laptop today.
Okay. And Ellen, you have another question if you're still with us. I know you've got the baby. Somebody asked on Edpuzzle, how do you see the kid answers?
The baby is currently asleep in my arms right now. On Edpuzzle, the teacher dashboard, it's got a link that shows all the kids that took it. It shows an overview of what score they got, and then you can actually click on them and see which individual questions they got incorrect.
Okay, so hopefully that answers the questions. I'm trying to see over here in our moderation panel if we've got some more questions. Since we do have a few more minutes, I kind of jumped through my presentation because I wanted to make sure that these ladies had plenty of time to share all the great things that they're doing. So I'd like to show a couple of examples, since we did have some people that were asking for that, if you're all okay with that. Okay, I'm seeing some nods. I think everybody's muted. All right, let me see about sharing my screen. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe the others are direct links. The Classkick was the only one that I know of that needed a login, and I had to get the login from the teacher. So I'll have to, I'm already in. Okay, great. So here, this is just one of the assessments. They had a unit 4 shapes common formative assessment that they did back in February, and you can see the slides that they have with the questions, and they were able, these are kindergartners, so they may not be able to read those directions. So they have the recording. Let's see if I can get that to play.
Circle the shape with 4 sides. Circle a shape that has 4 equal sides.
So you get the idea there. So they're able to do the audio piece in there as well. And then we have the student answers, if I can get into that. And as they're taking this, you can jump in and give feedback on any of these students. For this particular one, they made sure that they were finished before they gave feedback. But if we look at this one, for example, I can't remember, they were able to go back and rework after they got the feedback. So this one may be that feedback afterwards.
Great job, Gus, on this assessment. I see that you've answered all 4 questions correctly. We are so proud of you.
And that was a positive affirmation, but then they can also give feedback in case a student needs some more direction. And I'm not sure, I'm just going to click on this one. I think it may be one.
Cameron, please check this question. It asks, to circle the shape that has 4 equal sides. Think about that word equal. That means they're all the same length. Which of these shapes in front of us has 4 sides that are equal?
So you can see how powerful this can be. We also did this with this class with morning meeting. I don't know what each school may call that, but basically all your kids are on the carpet and you do the weather for the day, the days of the week, how many days you've been in school and things like that. And they did that with these students every day. There was a student that was up front that was actually leading, but all of those, as I mentioned earlier, peanut butter and jelly partners had a Classkick account that had those same exact questions on it, and they were able to go through and do the same thing. And the teachers were able to assess very quickly which students were getting those concepts and which weren't. Whereas normally you've just got one student up front and a bunch of little wormy bodies on the floor in front of you. So they did a great job with that and were able to assess. I wanted to see if I could find another one. Well, here's an example of May calendar. So they've got the calendar, what month is it? Circle the month. What day of the week is it? Circle the day. How many days have we been in school? And they write the number. They circle the date on the calendar. What is the weather like outside? They circle that. And then what related arts area are we going to today? So that gives the teacher some knowledge of what every single student in that class is getting and what they aren't getting and what they need to work on with those students.
Angie, we have a question. If a student listens to feedback from a student, are they able to redo a question, or how does that work?
So if they redo the question, if the teacher sends that out to them again, so with this formative assessment, what they did was give them feedback, and then they took the assessment again to show growth a little bit later. So that was not necessarily on each of those common assessments. It wasn't the only time that they would see that assessment. Does that answer your question?
That question came from Sarah Tyler. Does that answer it for you?
Okay, I'm not getting any response, so I think we're okay there. I just wanted to show Seesaw is another. I think several of you have used Seesaw, but this is an example. This is our library media specialist at one of the schools that was working with a group, and she's got the question, what was your favorite? And she's also recorded it, so she's got the activity.
Choose one of the following options to share your opinion. Be sure to use the journal entry to type your thinking and read your work before submitting. Then, read a post from a classmate and give them one helpful comment using the checklist. Here are your options to respond to. Option 1, what was your favorite experience?
So you get the idea on that. And then with the Adobe Spark, I had KET come in and do a videography workshop with the students, and they all had different aspects of playing the recorder that might be problems for new students learning to play the recorder. And so this is just a quick example of how the students put that together to explain.
Keep your pinkies off the holes. Then you should be good. Then put your right thumb on.
And I'm not going to go through all of that, but just very quick, easy ways to use Adobe Spark. I don't want to take up all the time. I think we've got about 10 more minutes. So are there any other questions or something that you all want to add?
I'm not seeing any other questions come up, but I think the overall theme that hopefully we're taking away from this is to just try something new and be okay with failing and getting up and trying again. So as long as you're just willing to learn and willing to try new things, I think that's the most important thing. And then just sharing your learning, and that's where we all grow.
Yes, if I can just jump off that just a little bit. If you have not read Seth Godin's book, Poke the Box, that is a very short, like 70-page book that you can read, and it's all about being curious and always trying new things. On the front of the book, it says, when was the last time you did something for the first time? So trying new things, that curiosity, and then actually doing it, and being willing to fail forward. So I think that goes right with what you were just saying, Caitlin. So if we don't have any more questions, we can hang out here for a little bit just to finish up until 11:30. But I know that some people are having to go out for lunch. Are the rest of the presenters good with hanging on for a little bit? If you can just thumbs up until 11:30. All right, great. And I'm just seeing a theme of everybody talking about just trying all these new things. Ladies, you all have rocked it. You have brought so many things. I've taken all kinds of notes. I can't wait to go back and work with my teachers on some of the things that you shared today. And your examples were incredible. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to have the opportunity to share. If you're new to Flipgrid, I'm doing a session this afternoon. I think it's the round 3, 2:35, I think, 2:30. But I'll be going over the basics of Flipgrid. If you've already been familiar with it, I'm sharing different ideas of what I've used with it this year beyond the Choose Your Own Adventure. But if you're interested in learning about that, I have a session coming up, and I know Ellen's doing a session this afternoon on sheets, if you're interested in that as well.
Right. We have several great afternoon sessions, 3 different time slots. Like you said, Ellen's doing sheets at 12:45, and the way that they build this is Google Basics sheets. And then I'm also doing one in the same time slot for Google Basics for Forms. And then at the 1:30 to 12:15 time slot, I have Google Basics Slides. And then during that time, Rosalind Manning will be doing a session on Pear Deck. And I know that that was one that Ellen showed us quite a bit on. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Pear Deck during that time slot. And at 2:25, I have another Google Basics with extensions. And at that same time slot, Caitlin has the Flipgrid session that she was talking about. And I hope I haven't left anybody out of this group, but lots of great sessions going on.
Kara, you did have one question. Do you have a link for how to set up the goggles for Google Expedition, or how you best implemented that for the littles?
Well, I don't have the goggles within my classroom. And so if you want to do the goggle actually view from the goggle form, you just click a goggle that's on the iPad that you're using, and it will show you the two eyes that you can view from. But honestly, I rarely use that one. But for the ones that you actually saw in the video, those are cardboard goggles. And so an iPhone is going to fit in the front of those. And that's why I don't have a class set of iPhones, and my kids don't all have them to bring in. And so we just use it from our iPads, and we use those within our classroom to move around and to view it. So that's my recommendation, is to use that, but you can always purchase the cardboard goggles, or if you do grants or anything like that, you can use those. But I've just used the iPads within my classroom to do it, but always open to suggestions on how to better use that in the classroom.
And it looks like we've had a few questions about how to get into those afternoon sessions. Melody sent out an email with the agenda for the day, and it has the links that will take you to the slide deck. And if you go down to the last few slides on that slide deck, it has those afternoon sessions with the links. We still have a few minutes, and we have several people still on, so I just want to throw this out to you ladies. I know that you were very candid about the things that worked well and the things that didn't. If you had somebody that was about to jump out and do some of these things, willing to fail forward but ready to start, what advice would you give them?
I would say, look at what you normally do in your routine in your classroom and choose one thing that would be just an easy start to go from what you normally do to adding a digital, component to it, whether it is instead of having an individual conference, they respond on a Flipgrid, or I don't, whatever you have in your classroom that's already part of your routine. I would say start there. Don't try to do something new and add technology to it. Take something you're already doing and then just make that small shift.
I think just playing around with it, really making sure that you have an idea, but then knowing that that idea probably isn't going to go exactly as planned, that there are going to be little glitches. And it makes me think about what we say to our students all the time. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. And are you able to just pick up and learn from that, and letting the kids see you as transparent as you are, to just say, hey, this is something new we're working with, and we're going to give it a try. And kind of collaborating with them to try to figure out how it's going to best look in your classroom. That's the beauty of it all. It can look so different in so many different classrooms, but it's how it works best for you and the kids in front of you.
I'll piggyback off what Kara said. I tell my kids every time we try something new, hey, this is new. It may not work. We will try to make it work, and we'll try and see if it'll make it better for next time. I live by the motto, work smarter, not harder. So all these digital tools give you all the data. So it gives you the ability to print it and show what they're doing, and it gives you it all in one place too.
Well, awesome. I appreciate you ladies. We're winding down here. I don't think there's a need for us to stay on. I'm sure everybody's going to try to beat that long lunch line wherever they're going out to eat. And that way you can get back. Remember that at 12:30, we have Casey Bell as our afternoon keynote, and she'll be kicking us off for those afternoon sessions. She'll get you pumped. I got to see that ahead of time. She's awesome. And you definitely don't want to miss it. So get your lunch to go and bring it back so you don't miss a second of the afternoon sessions. Thanks again for being with us, and have a great day.